have a conversation, okay?
Cool.
And yes, we are live. I'm very excited to be here with my new friend, Stewart. Stewart, how are you doing?
Great. Good to see you.
Or should I call you Mr. Goldring?
Nobody calls me Mr. Goldring. Bank manager. When somebody calls me Mr. Goldring, I know something's going wrong, you know, so maybe not. Stuart's fine.
I was in the store. Yeah.
You say it right. You said Stuart, didn't you?
Yeah.
I spent 20 years going to and from the States, and they never get it right. It's always Stuart, you know. They can't say, they don't get the proper pronunciation, you know.
Well, you know I'm Canadian, right?
I know Canadian.
You know, but you know that I'm Canadian. I'm in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So maybe we have a different pronunciation, possibly, from the Americans.
You're almost British.
Yeah.
Which bit of Canada are you in? Are you in the French bit or the English bit?
I'm in the French bit, but I was born in the English bit.
Okay, you're forgiven then.
And my French is horrible. It's atrocious. So
yeah, mine's not.
You speak French?
Un petit peu, monsieur.
So, listen, I'm really excited to talk to you. I got a CD of Lady Lake. It's my favorite. And I want to talk to you about you, your music, your twin brother, and the whole thing. There's so much to talk about. But first, I like to ask my guests to go back in time and talk about your childhood. I can see there's a Star of David, if I'm not mistaken, around your neck. And Goldring sounds like a Jewish name, so I'm guessing that you're Jewish heritage. So I want you to go back and talk to us about your childhood, your parents, your siblings, and any aunts and uncles, and especially in the context of faith and philosophy and the worldview that you were raised with, and bring us all the way up through to today in terms of your journey through life and how you came to understand your perspective, your unique perspective on life. Because my podcast is all about the guest and their spiritual journey. So take it away.
Okay. That's a very interesting question, one that I've never been asked. My spiritual journey. Well, I think, you know, we were brought up in a Orthodox Jewish home, my brother and I, with my sister. And that meant, whether you liked it or not, you learned to play a musical instrument. You learned to love art. You learned to love reading. You loved books. You loved knowledge. You loved the world around you. And we were brought up in a very poor working class area in London. And I guess the Jewish community there, I mean, you know, we didn't walk around with funny hats or any of that kind of business. But my father was a very educated, intelligent man. They were Ashkenazis. They came over here initially in the 1890s to England. And then again, my mother's family flew Poland before the Second World War. So in between the First World War and the Second World War. And of course they met, and we were the issue of that. You know, the Jews that were called Ashkenazi Jews were, although they were sort of middle class actually, and they were landowners, they weren't poor. But number one was education. Education was the means by which they said, you know, all people progress. And education meant not just about learning about the world around you, which is very important, but also, you know, as you say, there's a very much a spiritual dimension in the love and the understanding of music. Neither of our parents were musicians, which was quite interesting. And now looking back on that, but my father loved classical music, and he played classical music. So our early introduction to music was through classical music, which I loved and still enjoy very much. And of course, Gnidrolog, you know, has a lot of classical themes.
Yeah.
So from the age of 6, we were playing violin and learning classical music and reading and all those sorts of things, which a lot of rock musicians weren't really going that way. And from the age of 13, Colin and I were on the West End stage. We were acting.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Some big shows, as they say. Our first big show was a show called Oliver, which was Oliver Twist. It later became a film. We were sort of a couple of the children in the show, so we had that background. And very early on, they encouraged us to sing and dance and enjoy music. That bit of life was very good, but it was hard. You know, we didn't have money or wealth or cars or any of that kind of business. But actually, yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the spiritual dimension of music, because my brother's son, Kelly Woods, who's becoming quite a name over here as a musician, is very much involved with the Hare Krishna people. Which is a whole different thing. Lots of spirituality going on there, and food without meat and all those sorts of things. So
yeah, I like their food. I like their food because they don't use garlic and onions, and my wife and I don't eat garlic and onions. So we try to eat the Hare Krishna food as often as possible. They used to have a restaurant here in Montreal that was a Hare Krishna restaurant, and they actually give free food at the Hare Krishna temple.
Okay, well, it's not something that I got into, but my brother supports his son, and I kind of think of all the cults and mysteries of the way people find their God. It's one of the least polluting, shall we say, one of the least worse. There are much worse things in terms of, you know, people's beliefs and how they interact with the world around them. So they seem to be good people, and I'm not going to knock it. And all the ones that I've met are very good. So that's Kelly Woods. I mean, he's got owns his own studio over here. He's making a lot of music. So
what kind of music is he making?
You know what? How can I describe it? It's soulful, like English pop soul sort of thing. It's really good.
Okay.
Great little musician. Great piano, great guitar, lovely voice, good producer, and is doing really well. He's kind of recreating his father in many ways, which is not easy. Not easy.
Would your brother Colin come and talk to me one time, you think?
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, at the moment, Colin's been recovering from Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's a nasty thing. It's really interesting because it's quite a rare, I wouldn't call it a disease, but I don't know if you've ever come across it, but it's a nervous autoimmune disorder. And he's getting better now. He's back on the path. No one knows how he got it or why.
Well, it might have been the vaccine. It might have been the COVID vaccine.
No, I mean, I know in America that Christopher Cross, the writer, got Guillain-Barré syndrome. So some of the musicians have had it and completely recovered from it.
Okay.
Not everyone does. Okay. So at the moment he's recovering. He's doing very well. He lives in Wales now.
Oh.
And we're meeting up in a couple of weeks to have a little play with each other, which we do from time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not bad for 73, as they say.
Yeah. So you're twins, right?
We're twins, yeah. We look alike, we sound alike, but that's where it stops. You know, we are very, very different as people. We have similarities. I mean, we both got 3 children, which is great. Different children, of course. And they're weird because, of course, they're half brothers and sisters. You know, they're very close. And I'm married to an identical twin, which is even more weird. So yeah, it's a kind of a strange thing. So our children are very close with each other. They're closer than cousins would be, because obviously they share DNA, don't they? You know, whereas cousins don't normally do that.
Amazing. You know, without getting too personal into the nitty gritty, were there a lot, like, were you living the stereotypical rock and roll lifestyle, sleeping with a lot of women and stuff like that, or were you more conservative and more sort of dignified?
I don't know if you've seen pictures of us in the 70s, but we had long hair. You know, we were kind of like quite hippie looking. Were we living? No, is the answer to that. I don't know why women didn't find us excruciatingly attractive. I do, of course, but I can't understand why we. No, we didn't do any of that. We didn't do drugs. We didn't do alcohol. We really didn't. This is going to get boring for a hell of a lot of people, isn't it? Really, and with the one we didn't do drugs because a lot of people were dying around us. I mean, in those days, it was acid. It was, people were cocaine. They were really overdoing it, and people would attach themselves to the band and then throw themselves off a building. We kind of thought, oh, this must be the music or something like that, but it wasn't pleasant, and we kind of thought, no, we don't want to go down there. So we kind of rejected drugs and things. And people in the band were kind of people who played with us knew that if you were in this band and you were working with us, you had to do it straight. There's no other way. Well, you've heard the music, so you can realize maybe that some of this music is so complex that you can't do it when you're stoned. You need to have your wits around you as a musician. So
absolutely. Well, I gave you a compliment in that email I sent you, but it was straight from the heart, very sincere, that for almost 40 years I've been trying to find something that will excite me the way Graaf Generator excites me. And it took almost 40 years till I discovered Gnidrolog. And my wife thinks I'm insane. What is this Gnidrolog? She can't even pronounce it, but she just thinks I'm obsessed. But it's because ever since I discovered in my teens, in my troubled adolescence, I found a lot of solace in the dark and mysterious and complex and difficult music of Graaf Generator. And ever since then, it's like I'm disappointed by pretty much most of prog rock until I discovered Gnidrolog. So is this the first time you've heard this particular sort of compliment that, the standard is so high and there are very few prog acts that are that good and that complex and that dense and exciting?
Well, we know of that band, and of course they know of us, I'm guessing. And because Gnidrolog was very much a band's band, if you see what I mean. So, and lots of people who were in other bands would talk to us and compliment us, and Van der Graaf were one of those type of bands. And yeah, I mean, I've heard Van der Graaf Generator. They're on the same track, aren't they? I tend to put us in the King Crimson sort of Gentle Giant, Van der Graaf Generator. Yes, of course, who we kind of played with and had music relationships with. So there are bands that are in that genre. But I don't get what modern prog is trying to do, because it's not really trying to do what we were trying to do in the 70s. What we were trying to do was break some of the rules around music. Music had to be 2 minutes long. It had to go verse, chorus, blah, 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 blah. The record company just didn't know what was happening. They were continually very annoyed with us. What the hell is this? How can we release this? What are you doing? And kind of, remember, Gnidrolog was signed to RCA. RCA at that time was one of the biggest record companies in the world.
How did that happen?
There was a guy, what happened is our manager said to us, this is interesting. I'm really interested in this. I don't want you to do any gigs for 6 months at all. All I want you to do is to find somewhere to live and play and rehearse for 6 months. And then when you're ready, and they bought us equipment and blah, blah, blah and everything. And they said, when you're ready, then we'll do a gig. And I think at the first couple of gigs that we did, they had record companies come and see us. And Ken Glancy used to be the head of RCA. God knows what he was thinking. Signed us to quite a big deal. And we thought, oh, this is, you got to put this in context of how old we were. We were 18, 19. That's young. We weren't in the business. We didn't want to be in the music business. We didn't like the music business. So Ken Glancy, who was head of RCA in Europe, liked what we were doing, liked the music, and thought he'd take a go at it, and signed us. Very strange. I wonder what other A&R people in the business would have been saying to him. But I can imagine, I can imagine what that might be like. Because what you did, if you signed a group, you signed a group that you think would sell a lot of records and looked good on TV or something, hey. But I think what a lot of people would know about Gnidrolog, because they weren't around, was how good we were live. We were an excellent live band, very entertaining. Bang, bang, bang. It was really a good show. Well, we'd had 6 months to prepare the show. So, and I think that's part of what sort of drew RCA in. But as I said, RCA Victor, huge company. And we had at that time, a very big, good amount of money to be able to do whatever we wanted, which was quite unusual. We weren't only doing that with the Rolling Stones and of course RCA had Elvis Presley. That was their big thing, wasn't it? So we were kind of stunned. Here's a band that comes along with a name that nobody can pronounce, with music that is almost, unimpenetrable. And yet you take it on and you put some money and cross your fingers. I have to say that Colin and I, being identical twins and looking as we did, gorgeous,
that
long
helped.
hair and all that kind of, I guess somewhere there thought, this, whatever happens here at the end of the day, these guys could be beautiful looking guys and maybe they'll do some pop music and make some pop hits and things, but that was never on our mind at all. Hence the name.
Yeah, well, I listened to the live thing. I guess you recorded it in it was a concert in 73 or 74, and then you published it in 79 or something like that. Was there a live album?
It was. I think it's called Gnidrolog Live.
Yeah.
And that was from recordings in 71 and 72. But it didn't come out. Somebody found the tapes who I knew, and they recorded from the mixing desk. And that's what that is. It's just bits of shows recorded live from the mixing desk.
Okay.
That's Gnidrolog Live. Yeah. Strange thing.
It starts with intro or something. It's called intro, one of the little pieces, and it sounds like, I think is it your brother that's doing the banter, the silly banter?
And both of us did silly banter. But hey, intro, which was, our start off live track. I mean, you could never have recorded that and released it as a record. I mean, what would people think, but it was really funny.
Yeah.
What band goes on, plays one chord and then says, thanks very much, we're leaving now,
I love it. I love it. I wanted to ask you, do you know and love and respect the Bonzo Dog Band?
Very much so. Viv, genius.
Yeah.
I mean, you can laugh, but Viv Stanshaw was an absolute genius.
Oh, genius.
Absolutely. And we kind of took quite a lot from Bonzo Dog. I was interviewed in the States, I think in 2019, and they asked me to pick my 6 favorite records of all time, which was really quite hard. And one of them was Intro Outro by Viv Stanshaw and the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band, which I'm sure you'll know if you do, but I bet something about them. And by the way, excellent musicians.
Oh yeah,
really nice guys, and we gigged with them a few times. And yeah, Viv Stanshaw was just hilarious.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Amazing. What a genius. I think I'm friends with his son on Twitter. It's possible.
Oh, great. Okay, send them my regards and deep respect.
Yeah. Did you meet Viv in real life?
Yeah. I mean, we were a lot of the shows that we did, they did.
Oh.
You go back in that's a lot of how it happened. You'd be flying up and down the M1, which is the biggest motorway in England at the time. And we'd meet at the North One services, and all the bands that had been playing would meet up at about 1 o'clock. Yeah, because people were driving down to London, or they'd been doing a gig and they were driving up north, and you'd get 20 bands in there, all having tea, coffee, and whatever.
Nice.
And all types of bands. because that's where you stopped at the North One services on the M1. Bang. That's how you did it.
Well, you're from Kent, you said, and Canterbury's in Kent. Are you in that particular part of Kent, or which part of Kent are you in?
I'm quite near Canterbury, but we're not part of the Canterbury scene.
Okay.
Now, the thing about the Canterbury scene is there were like 4 or 5 bands in Canterbury at the time. We weren't living in Canterbury at the time, by the way. I'm trying to think of who they are.
Caravan.
Yeah, Caravan.
Soft Machine. Soft Machine.
Soft Machine, great band.
Amazing.
But not like Gnidrolog. If you used art as a definition to describe what you were doing, I'd say that the Canterbury scene, which was heavily drug laden, by the way, was about the difference between impressionism, and Gnidrolog was about expressionism. So if you looked at those two art movements, we would kind of try to relate what we're doing to art as well. What they were doing with the Canterbury scene was very much the music set on very few chords, quite subliminal. Is that the word? Yeah. And kind of see, even Soft Machine's very different because very good musicians.
Yes.
Superb band, one of my favorite bands. But they were different from other bands in the Canterbury scene, but still they had that sort of little bit of hand me the joint, friend thing, and it was a little bit like that, which Gnidrolog were not like that at all. Gnidrolog were entertaining, different,
more intellectual, and I guess Gong, if we want to go to the extreme with Gong, David Allen and all that, and
never kind of met up with them. I don't know why. I think it's because Gong, I don't know if you'd know this being a Canadian, but were very big in Europe,
France.
And they used to, especially, and they used to spend a lot of their gigging time in France and Europe rather than England.
Yeah, that's like Van der Graaf with Italy. They were big in Italy.
Sure. Yeah, and I understand that. But, prog was very, very compartmental. It wasn't a group of people that met and had coffee. It was, every band was very different, coming from a totally different angle. And
What, Robert?
King Crimson.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. You say what you want, man.
Well, I was just gonna say, well, I'm getting all this gold from you. I don't want to miss anything. But Robert Wyatt's one of my favorites. He's from Soft Machine. He was quite a special character, no?
Wonderful man.
Creative.
So sad. Really bad injury, and
was he drunk and fell out a window, or what happened?
I don't know. I really can't remember, but he lost the use of his legs or something, didn't he? He was very, very ill for a long time, but, wonderful. He was wonderful. He was Soft Machine as well. I love that band. But I was very careful. Gnidrolog at no time gets into that. No. If you listen to the music of Gnidrolog, there's never a moment that you would say, oh, well, I would just smoke some drugs and listen to this. It's too uncomfortable. It was too unsettling. Yet some of the other movements, like Rio, rock in opposition and things like that, those guys forgot what tune is. They kind of forgot that they're not. It would be lovely if there was some kind of melody that the poor old audience could latch onto. I very much appreciate what they were doing as musicians. I thought they were fabulous, RIO, but there was no penetration from listeners, really, was there? And if there was,
if there was,
I guess they were pretending to enjoy it. I don't know. It's not my kind of thing.
Well, it's funny because I find myself whistling, the melodies, the very memorable melodies from Lady Lake. Yeah. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's a nice album. The first album is interesting as well.
It's a more difficult. I'm just learning to love it now.
It is more difficult. It's much more difficult to get into. I mean, lots of musicians have spoken about Snails on the track on that record, and way ahead of its time. Structurally, and when we were creating it, you don't slow down and speed up in the middle of numbers, do you? You know, it's unheard of. And so we were trying to do things with listeners to kind of say, you know, music can happen in more than one way and can affect you in more than one way. I mean, it's a very dark piece, very, very dark. You know, other bands have said how important it was to listen to it and hear it. They wouldn't want to try and copy it, but there was a band called Arc Nemesis, I think, from Italy, who copied that track, Snails. But it's worth a listen because, you know, let's put this in perspective. I was only 19, you know, creating things that, you know, from a classical background, you know, with jazz. I mean, a lot of it was the melting pot of the musicians that were in the band, you know, because Nigel, very much out and out rock drummer, but a flautist and an oboist. And, you know, we fell off my chair when he walked in with a flute and oboe. I said, "We'll have you, mate. You're in." and of course, Peter Cowling, who's no longer with us, of course, now, wonderful bass player, wonderful musician. And then later on, we added Earle, great sax player. And we were very lucky, Colin and I were very lucky to work with these people who were really at the top of their game. You know, they could have walked into any band and done anything. Why they I suppose it's because they were getting paid or something. But, you know, why they took that on, because it was intense, you know. If you were in a band, you'll know that bands rehearse, but not like this, you know, not the way we rehearsed. I mean, because people would come in with a German of an idea, 4 notes. Let's try that, you know, and then we break that and get into it and turn it around and do all kinds of musical tricks with it. Some of them are kind of classical tricks, things like augmentation, where you take those 4 notes, but you make them as long as you possibly want. Some of them are diminution, so you take the 4 or 5 notes and you play them very quickly or in different ways or in different keys over different chords. So it was really fun for us because we were experimenting with music in a way that nobody else was experimenting like that. I mean, Bob Fripp was with King Crimson, but in a different way. You know, they had some good tunes as well. And Fripp decided that, you know, normal tuning wasn't good enough for him. So he created a completely different way of tuning the guitars, which I found very, very interesting. But I never did that myself because I was always worried on stage about tuning and all those kind of things. And there was no keyboard in our band, and we did that on purpose. Because as soon as you put a keyboard in a band, the next thing that happens is you have strings or, you know, an organ. And that's one of the sounds that we thought, yeah, that's the devil right there. You know, we want to.
Wow, it's amazing.
It's often pointed out on reviews, this band has no keyboard, whereas all those bands at those times were using electronics and mellotrons and one thing or another. Got nothing against keyboard players at all. It's just that keyboards really take over whatever you're doing in a band. And what the bits we were interested in was real instruments, recorders, flutes, oboes, those sorts of things, horns. I mean, we all played lots of different instruments, and we all played lots of different instruments on these records because we wanted to know what a double bassoon sounded like instead of a bass guitar. What if you used a wind instrument like a bass guitar?
So on ship, that opening, what instrument is that?
The sax is da 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 da.
Yeah.
Da, da. What a lovely riff as well, isn't it?
Are they bass sax or alto sax, or what kind of sax is that?
Well, that is the genius, and I mean genius, of Irish Earle. As we said to him, shit, Colin just wrote us a folk song with a guitar. and told us all to go away and do something with it and then come back. And what Irish Earle did was take his own tune. If you listen to it, it's not a tune of the tune, as it were. It's its own melody, isn't it? And over-recorded about 6 saxophones, all in different keys, to see what they would sound like together. It's a great sound, isn't it?
Amazing.
Boy.
That's the first impression I had of Gnidrolog. It was on a compilation album called Lullabies for Catatonics. Are you aware of this?
No, I don't know.
You have one track on there, and that's the track Ship. And I was just like, it's like, what is this? What am I listening to? And it was Ship. And it grabbed my attention. Out of the out of the 30 tracks or whatever, how many tracks are on this compilation album, this is the one, like, I have to know, what is this and who is this band?
Okay, nice guitar solo, you can say.
I was gonna say that. But I wanted to start with that sax, because it grabs you. It does grab you.
Yeah, marvelous. And on quite a few tracks, hang on, my dog's just walked in. You're right. She's looking for food.
Oh.
What's really nice that we found was a really interesting sound combination that it's used in classical music and now and again in some areas, 19th century music, is a recorder and oboe.
Wow.
Recorder and oboe.
Wow.
Oh, you put those two together, they're like chalk and cheese. Recorder's very smooth. Yeah, it's quite, when you hear a recorder, you think 16th century, 15th century. You hear an oboe, you think much later, 17th, 18th century. But put those two sounds together, yeah, incredible, different combination. It's not something anyone experiments with nowadays, is it? I don't know. I don't know what modern prog is or what they're trying to do. But, we knew what we were trying to do.
Well, for me, maybe I'm a purist or a snob or whatever, and I'm no genius when it comes to a history of music or anything else. But I know that I love early 70s prog rock from England. From England.
It's the best.
From England. Yeah. It's not anything else. It's early 70s prog rock from England, and that there's something about that is just, there's something in it, and you've expressed a lot about what that is, what that unique angle is that you had.
Absolutely. I mean, there's some other bands there that, if you're into that, you want to listen to bands like Griffin and Third Ear Band.
Third Ear Band, I heard a little bit of that. Yeah, I heard a little bit of that.
They were doing similar kind of things.
Okay.
But not as rocky as we were. We liked the dynamic of rock as well.
Yeah.
We wanted Nigel Pegrum, great drummer, and has appeared in lots of other people's albums as well. And we wanted to use that dynamic of the bass guitar and drums in this genre, because if you strip out rock from Gnidrolog, you're left with kind of jazz, classical, without the kick to it, which we love so much. So it was very unusual combination. I think the other thing about that period, 1969 to 1972 in England, is there were some great bands around, but it wasn't as if we all got together and said, "Oh, let's do this." It was just that music was traveling in that direction. And there were musicians who had lived through the 60s and done all that kind of stuff, and their appetite was kind of not whetted by anything else around. And the natural progression, because a lot of the bands that we played with at that time or supported, just like Clear Blue Sky and things, you think, oh, we know where we're heading with this. You know where we want to go. Happy Magazine. These are probably bands you've never heard of. Great little English bands at the time. They didn't really get much out of England because the record companies were not really that into it. It wasn't sexy for them. And if you look at what else was around, I mean, the start of the 70s, disco, and God knows, it didn't appeal But live, it did. You know, people were wanting to go and see those bands and hear something different, hear something new. And all those bands were contributing, but it wasn't as if somebody sat down and said, let's have an art music, let's have an art movement, everybody. Didn't happen like that. It evolved through mainly through a lot of classical and jazz musicians starting to work with rock musicians. And I think that was the kind of the catalyst of prog music, bringing in those diverse interests and education. Classical musicians are trained totally differently from a rock musician. You know, I if you read music and you have an understanding and basic of history and a grounding in classical music, rock music might seem a bit simplified to you to a certain extent, and vice versa. You know, when I started doing lots of sessions and things and working with other people, and worked with the BBC Symphony Orchestra over here, the incredible musicianship of these people, absolutely incredible, but they don't know how to play 4/4. So,
There was there was a band that caught my eye, also not nearly as exciting as Gnidrolog. A couple of them. One was Rare Bird. Another one was James Harvest Barkley or something like that. They do more classical stuff.
Barclay James Harvest.
Is that it? Barclay James Harvest? They had a couple of catchy tunes. I don't know what they were going for, a big orchestra sound or something.
Yeah. I mean, do you know what? I heard that they were still doing gigs in Europe as some lineup.
Wow.
I think it must be the grandchildren or something. When I start hearing these 70s bands performing, I believe it's, you know, the fifth generation of them, you know, whether the Barclay James Harvest, yeah, good guitar player in that band. They did some shows with us. But a lot of the shows we were doing at that time, to put it into kind of context, was bands that were on our shows like Thin Lizzy, David Bowie in the early stages.
Yeah. I saw you were on a card with David Bowie, Thin Lizzy. I saw that on your Facebook.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't, got to be honest with you, I don't really attend to that. Somebody else does it.
Oh.
Somebody who likes the music, and I just
now
and again they say hi to me and can I talk to someone or whatever, or say something about something, but I don't know. But there were some clubs in London at that time, not in Leicester, I hope. Certainly in London at that time, where small clubs, fairly small clubs that musicians went to.
Okay.
And we used to play at those clubs. So, you know, Hendrix and Led Zeppelin and people like that would turn up just to hear those bands. I think they were pinching ideas or something like that. I don't know.
I used to work at the London Astoria in London with my wife.
Oh yeah, cool. Well, good. And it was at one time a big music venue. They had shows in the 60s, I think. It's still there, isn't it? Astoria.
Yeah. Did you like Pink? Did you like Pink Floyd at all, or what do you think of them?
I don't know. I mean, Gilmour is a wonderful guitar player, you know, have to say. Bass player, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I don't do I mean, I've been to Israel several times and been asked to go there and perform, and so has Colin. You know, am I pro-Israel? I'm pro-people. You know, pro-people.
Yeah.
I really don't think they should have got themselves involved in all of that. It's not right, you know, because the answer to that is, what can you do to help peace in that country, in that troubled area? What can we do to help bring peace? I mean, we have played there to mixed audiences, never been a problem. Go and do that. Pink Floyd, go to Israel and go and do some concerts with Palestinians and one thing and another, and do it that way. bring some peace, bring some love.
Well, that's a beautiful song on your Gnosis album. That song, it was written in the 70s, right? Is that right?
Which one?
The one about Shaddai.
Shaddai, yeah, it was actually, yes. I mean, Shaddai is one of the names of God. The things that Jews have got is that one of the things you don't say is God's name. I won't go into all of this, but
You say Shem, the name.
Yeah, well,
or Adonai, Lord.
You're getting there. But the thing, Adonai, which in Hebrew letters is Yod, Daleth, Yod, Nun, Yod. Sorry about speaking Hebrew here. Got translated to Western culture as the word Adonai, but it's not that at all. Because one of the things Orthodox Jews believe is that you may not take the Lord's name in vain. So to say Adonai is a sort of a, what can we say, a gentrification or an appropriation of the Lord, the name of the Lord. Shaddai isn't. So, and in fact, yeah, the Israelis wouldn't use the word Adonai. Jews in Israel would not use the word Adonai. It's quite a no sort of thing. But the kind of Christians, I think, use it as well, don't they?
Yeah.
But no, I think the point I'm making here is times are hard in the Middle East, Let's do everything that we can to bring people together, not to force them apart. And unfortunately, members of Pink Floyd don't understand this. They think it's cool to politicize those issues, when in fact we shouldn't be politicizing those issues. We should be bringing those peoples together. And I think what they've done politically there is makes it difficult for me to accept maybe that their music is in the right spirit base, if you understand what I mean.
Of course, yeah. My friend in the chat here, Pychris Burton, says hello. He's a Prague fan too. He doesn't know about Gnidrolog, but he just discovered. But everyone I meet, I'm a Christian. I don't know if you know that I'm a Catholic Christian. That's what my podcast is all about. But I'm just I talk to all kinds of different people. But now I'm evangelizing. Instead of meeting people, walking up to random strangers and say, "Hey, have you heard about Jesus Christ?" I say, "Hey, have you heard about Gnidrolog? Like, this is my new thing." I'm like preaching. I'm preaching Gnidrolog. It's like, you have to check them out. I've walked up to so many people and said, just randomly, "Have you heard about Gnidrolog?" Because I want other people to appreciate what I appreciate, but it's like no one even knows about Gnidrolog, much less would they enjoy it if they listen to it. 1 in 1,000 will enjoy it. No offense, no offense.
It wasn't created for that. It was created because it hadn't been created before. And sometimes when you do new things, especially in music, our record company loathes the very sight of us. Oh no, we've got to do another album with them. What the hell are they doing? But it was really what we were trying to say was, we can take disparate elements of music, we can change things, we can annoy you to a certain extent. Because you listen to Gnidrolog, you have to throw out some of those things about, oh, this is what a tune is like. And this is how it starts, verse, chorus, middle eight, verse, chorus, throwing all that out. But that was not just us. It wasn't just us that was doing that. Lots of other missions had got tired of the usual kind of forms of music and how they should be. And, even bands like Gentle Giant, who weren't political in a way that we were, because quite a lot of our stuff is political, not party political, but talking about some of those things that we are passionate about, like the environment and peace.
I could never be a soldier, one of my all-time favorites.
Wow, yeah. And it was very, very interesting that we had lots of letters from Russian people saying that it's. I think quite a lot of them never want to be soldiers, you know. So to have English people making a record about never wanting to be a soldier had a lot of meaning for them, and they found that, yeah, quite heartwarming that we were producing that kind of music. So, and there was a big kind of scene in Russia for 1970s prog music.
Oh,
so,
yeah. Oh.
What they used to do, of course, is all that music was banned. All our records were banned in Eastern Europe at that time, which is what we expected. But people would record it on cassettes and share the cassettes with you.
Trading, yeah.
Oh yeah, well, not even trading, you know, just recording it and sharing it that way, because there was no platform. We were talking about pre-computers, remember? You know, there was no internet, there was no way to download music as there is now. That didn't happen.
Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask you, there's reference to the word computer in one of your early albums. And, like, I mean, the computers were very, very basic at that time, and they weren't in the households. Which song was that, and why was the word computer in there? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do. It's in a song called Peter.
Yeah.
Peter was a rebel. Yeah. It was about...
The second album on In Spite of Harry's Toenail?
Yeah, I don't know which album it's on, but it's about people, you know, the whole thing about going to work in an office and, you know, not naturally knowing what you're doing or actually contributing anything to society or your community or anything like that. I mean, it was about rejecting that and starting to ask, you know, if you're at work, what are you doing? What are you doing at work? How are you contributing? How are you contributing to, obviously you're supporting yourself and maybe your family, but obviously very little else. And that's what that was about. It was about, that's why Peter was a rebel. He wanted to reject that. And it came, interestingly enough, from Repent Harlequin, said the TikTok man, which is a short story by an American writer whose name escapes me, but somebody will know there. Repent Harlequin. And Peter was one of those ideas that we got from Repent Harlequin, which is a great story, by the way. I think it's
Harlan Ellison. Yep. You got it.
Somebody reminded you, huh? What a great story. And that had, when I read that, that was made me think of Peter. And when we recorded Gnosis in 2000, which is kind of an interesting album because it's half music and half songs, I wrote an orchestral piece called Repent Harlequin, and that was from originally. And I wrote to Harlan Ellison and sent him the music, and I said, you know, we wrote this because of you.
Wow.
He was thankful.
Wow. Amazing.
Great writer. Great story. Can you imagine that? So, I mean, people who know Harlan Ellison are your friends. Can you ever imagine a TV show called Repent Harlequins, the TikTok man? You know, I can't see it. Yeah, because part of what prog was there was big, wider thing going on in art, rejecting the cultures that we'd been led to understand were norms. And Harlan Ellison did that in his writing. Great writer. And somebody you know knew it, so there you go.
This is totally off topic, but what do you think of the Sleaford mods? They're kind of getting big. You heard about them?
No.
Okay. They do sort of a rough punk, sort of electronic punk thing now. They're out of, I guess, Sleaford, wherever that is.
I know.
You can check them out. They're a bit crass. They're kind of like, and this is a good segue, I guess, into the Pork Dukes. I don't know if you have anything to say about your Pork Dukes era. I mean, it's X-rated, X-rated content, right?
Highly. Me and Frank Zappa. I mean, the thing about that was, in 2000, I wanted to record an album, and somebody said to me, you know, you had this single by the Pork Dukes that we'd released sort of 10 years earlier.
About your mother gave you a rocket launcher or something?
Oh no, that was something else. Bend and Flush it was called.
Oh, I actually like that one. I do like that one. I like that one.
Well, it's nothing to. What happened was, is somebody wrote it. Oh no, somebody asked us to write it. They said they'd put the name of a track called Bend and Flush by the Port Dukes, and immediately got 2,000 copies. Sold 2,000 copies of it. Could we go and write it and perform it? So we did. And Colin and I went into the studio with our friend Nigel, and we banged it out. A great little record, lovely little ditty, and it kept me in money for some time, which was quite unusual, which is why I love punk so much, because, it actually, you have to say, in the way that Gnidrolog never did, and we did everything ourselves. We printed them, we went and did the gigs, we did everything ourselves, and we had a great time. We made some money, and I don't know if you know anything about the Port Dukes. It's quite fun and it's quite clever.
Very, very, very crass. But did you, in your heart of hearts, are you in favor of sexual license and debauchery and misogyny and these sorts of things, or are you just having a bit of fun and poking fun at the society, or like?
Oh, no, it's absolutely ironic in every.
Okay.
In every show. My wife wouldn't let me say anything else. No, of course we're not. Don't agree with any of that shit, misogyny or any of that sort of thing. But it was it was an antithetic reaction to a certain extent, with feminism at that time.
Yeah.
And I thought, what if you started creating records that were so awful and so misogynistic that everyone would find them ironic and funny, and like all of these things, you should never do it, because some people actually take it seriously and think it's actually true what you're saying or what you're doing. Of course, none of it was, but we toured the States for 19 years with it and made money. Whereas putting a Gnidrolog show together costs hundreds of thousands of pounds. I did go through a thing with Gnidrolog of getting some scorers to start scoring stuff out for me for orchestra, which cost me a lot of money, with the view of us doing we couldn't put a band together, or we could put a band together, but it would cost a lot of money. But that's really what Colin and I really wanted to do with Gnidrolog about 10 years ago, is do it that way and do some concerts with an orchestra and recreate it. But the cost was, nobody wanted to go there.
Your friends at RCA could give you some money.
There is no RCA anymore. I mean, I think they were taken over by a German company, weren't they? Whose name I can't even remember. A classical German record company.
I can find out. I can Google it.
Yeah.
Is it RCA Victor? RCA Victor, is that what it used to be called?
Yes. And they were taken over by, you're going to tell me right now.
Was it Sun Records? Sun Records? No.
No.
RCA.
Sun were American.
Or maybe it was Sun first. Okay. Defunct. It says it's defunct. Acquired by GE, General Electric. No.
You got me.
That doesn't make sense.
The thing about Gnidrolog is, after those 2 albums, and even though we knew we'd sold lots of albums, we never got a penny. I mean, mainly because they'd given us a big advance, and it would have taken us some time to work the advance out. And they stopped us signing to anyone else for a couple of years, because obviously, even though the band had kind of, lived its glorious existence, but for Colin and I, because we were signed individually to that contract, it made us very hard. We did some records with A&M.
Okay.
Which did kind of all right and very well, but to resurrect that thing of the 70s, I kind of got to admire Bob Fripp, keeping going and doing. I really do admire him. Really do admire him because he's kept true to his word. He's produced the music that he's always wanted to. He's kept on doing it. He's a great force in music. But could there be a Gnidrolog in the year 2023? I couldn't see it. It's so different. It's so. On what basis could you put a band together to do that? I found it hard in 2000 to put a band together, which I did, off the proceeds of the sales of the Portduke records. So nobody knew who we were. I mean, it was we lied about who was in the Portdukes, mainly because the more discussion there was about who could possibly do such a terrible thing, the more records we sold.
the mystique. There's a touching sort of love song on the Gnosis, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it, Gnosis album. Where the singer, I guess it's you or your brother, I guess your brother, singing about like, put down your technology and let's go up to bed and rekindle our love, that sort of thing. Do you remember that song?
I do. Nice. I said to him, nice little song, put that on the album. We actually recorded that album in Australia, and because Nigel, our drummer, had moved there and he has a studio in Cairns in Australia, did very well out there. And Nigel joined a Steel Eye Span, and we got very friendly with the bass player as well, Rick Kemp. And I took Rick Kemp and Nigel, myself and Colin, and the four of us recorded the Gnosis album. And it was half me doing orchestral stuff and half of Colin's delightful songs. And I think that's a delightful little song. It really is. But it's just a song, So it was a mix of things that we'd had around for a long while and things that I'd come up with, musically, that I thought I wanted to. The problem was Cairns. We arrived there. We were there for a month. And I booked all kinds of session musicians. And boy, it was difficult to get anybody. Australia's a small country. Most of the musicians that are there are in Melbourne or, in the big cities. Cairns is not a huge city in Australia. But what we did do, and what I really enjoyed about it, so did Colin, was meeting up with the native Australian musicians that were there. Incredible.
Oh, Aboriginals.
Yeah. And they were amazing. Ash Dargan and people like this. I learned so much about their music, which is absolutely incredible. The whole basis of their music is so totally different from Western music. I mean, obviously a lot of it is didgeridoo and rhythm based. But, I'm a bit of an ethnomusicologist and I enjoy reading about it and understanding it. And that was absolute, a great month to be working with them. But could I get a decent string quartet in Cairns? No, I bloody couldn't. So I had to take that album and bring it back to England and add stuff and re-record it. My great friend, Chris Coppin, who you may know from Procol Harum.
Okay.
Great friend of ours. I said to him, "Oh, can you put some of your lovely C4 organ on it?" So I had to send it down to Melbourne, send all the tapes down to Melbourne, which he has his own studio, recorded everything and sent it back to me. Did a fantastic job, absolutely fantastic. And I said, "Look, how much?" And he said, "No, it's a gift to you guys." So, and he's on that album. Wonderful player.
Wow.
He's playing on a track called Kings of Rock. The Kings of Rock are dead.
Yeah.
They certainly were by then, even though we're still. Great musician.
When I'm listening to Lady Lake or In Spite of Harry's Toenail, which is hilarious, by the way, the title is hilarious. I want now that I've met you, I have a connection with you, and hopefully I get to meet your brother when he's feeling better. But in terms of you and what you bring, of course, there's the guitar, but it also says voice, that you do some vocals. I want to know, in terms of writing and in terms of vocals, where you shine the most in the first two albums. where will I say there's Stewart and it's not Colin, it's Stewart, that voice? Or are you always in the background and he's always in the foreground with the voice?
I mean, you know, it's interesting because in Gnidrolog we had kind of the usual type of configuration. You know, Mars, the bass player was playing bass, but he also plays cello quite a lot on those records. So we were all playing other instruments. What was my strength in the band? I guess in the arrangements of what you hear, because nothing is, you know, a straight song, is it? Nothing is, oh, let's just sing this song. So part of what I was doing in the band was deconstructing things. You know, people say, what do you mean by deconstructing things? Well, if you take something that's very recognizable, you take various beats and rhythms and you mess around with it and you come up with something else. That was really my kind of job in the band. But we had two other great musicians as well doing that. But mainly the guitar, I play mainly the guitars on the records, and Colin does mainly the singing on the records. Now and again we harmonise and do things together, but generally the songs like the one that you mentioned are Colin's. I mean, I don't write songs. I'm a musician. I write music. So
I see. But all the musical stuff, all the interesting musical stuff that I'm hearing that's tripping me out, that is it safe to say that you were the biggest contributor of that sort of deconstruction like you were talking about?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I was never happy with I was never happy with straight. You know, if it sounded too normal, I would say, well, this, you know, this could be anyone doing this stuff. We need to find another way of expressing it. We need to find
a twist.
Get into that.
A twist, yeah. Let me ask you, when you listen, I don't know if you do listen to the first two albums, but when you did or when you do, is there a certain transition or a certain part that you wrote where you at least had a hand in manipulating the structure of the song or the melody or whatever? Is there a part where you always get a little smile or maybe a tear in your eye because it's so beautiful and unexpected and surprising? Is there a track that I can that I'll go back and listen to now that we've spoken, and I'll say, oh, this is the part that Stewart really likes, that he contributed to? What comes to mind?
God, you know what? It's a really strange question because it's not listening to myself. I'm like Johnny Depp. You know, somebody. The thing about Johnny is they always say to Johnny, you know, have you seen your film yet? And he never sees any. He's never seen any of his films. Did you know that? And you know, they say, oh, this bit, and I don't know, particular movie that you were in. You know, how did you do that? What do you think of that? He always says the same thing. Well, I've never seen it. You never see the end part of it. I don't go to the cinema. I'm once I've done it, I'm there in a creative process. And you know, I love Johnny Depp, by the way. And you know, once his juices are going as an actor, you can see Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh, come on, what a performance! You know, and you can see that that's coming off the top of his head. You cannot kind of recreate that. If you could bottle it, then somebody else would do it, wouldn't they? And they don't. And he doesn't go over it again. Do I go over it again? There are bits on our records that I love to death. But they're generally not me playing. They're genuinely things like where I've got an orchestral part that I think, boy, that really works well, you know. Or that is so different. That little arrangement came together really well, or I contributed to stuff. I mean, I don't know if you know about rhythm much, but
no,
or whether it's your thing, but some of your listeners will understand that you can do a lot with 4/4, and by that I mean, you know, rock rhythm is a very straight rhythm. You know, if you listen to Gnidrolog, we would be exploring 9/8, 13/8, 5/4 a lot of the time. Strange time signatures to work in, uncomfortable time signatures to work in, different things. You wouldn't see them much on rock records, and you think, how did you get to that? And how we got to that was you take 4/4 and you deconstruct it, and then you're using quite a lot of the things that I'm proud of on the records are where we're using strategies, if you want, that are not rock at all to come up and finish the record is finished, if you want, to a certain extent, by doing something with 4/4 that is kind of unusual. We used to say in the band, listen, as long as we all go bang together in the 16th beat, everything will be all right. But I tell you, living in that band was hell. Any musician who, listening to the kind of music that you're talking about will understand the complexity of what's happening with Gnidrolog. And the trick is not to make it sound complex. But boy, some of those things, if you have to feel, you can't feel it. You can't feel it because a lot of those rhythms are not dance rhythms. They're not, you can't click your fingers to a lot of this stuff. So how do you remember where you are in the song?
Well, I was gonna say, it's like the reason I like Graaf Generator, the best parts of Graaf Generator, and the reason I like Gnidrolog is because I want to get lost in a world of confusion and then have a resolution, and it just feels so good. It feels so good to come out of a dense forest of darkness and chaos, apparent chaos, and then to have a resolution. So there's something about that, the tension that's allowed to build up. And another aspect is the voice. I guess it's predominantly your brother Colin's voice. There's something raw. There's something almost imperfect about it that I like. And I've listened to a lot of prog rock from the 70s in England, and I don't like the voices. I just don't. But I like Peter Hamill from Graaf Generator, and I like your brother Colin's voice. And they're both a little bit operatic, theatrical, a little bit off-kilter, a little bit strange, a little bit deranged. Is this all hitting home with you? Is this stuff you've heard before?
Yeah. How do you... It's a thing, a musician's nightmare. How do you make something appear to have just happened, which is scripted? If you're Johnny Depp, you just do whatever you do and forget it immediately and cannot recall any of it. That was not what Gnidrolog was about. That stuff was worked on note for note, beat by beat, very, very hard work. How do you deconstruct something? And the only way you can do it is to actually look at it as a building block and start pulling bits away from it, that you're not supposed to be doing that. You're not supposed to be picking at something. The resolution thing that you're talking about is very interesting. Sometimes it's one chord at the end of the song, Sometimes it's an E major, it's a resolution, and you go, oh, how wonderful. We've arrived somewhere at the end of it. Yeah, I think that's what you've said there is very, very important for music and art, isn't it? If you look at expressionist art, a lot of people will say, well, it's just colors everywhere, it's just odd shapes, and it's not giving an impression. But it's when you stand back from it 50 yards and you see what the artist was trying to do as an event, as a complete event, then you understand where you are with it. It's not always about doing every hair in an eyebrow. Very complex. I mean, art and music have a lot in common in that they both tend to do the same things. And the other thing is, you probably noticed, is that and those students that will like prog, some of them will be understanding of how art moves. If we looked at the pre-Raphaelite era and you looked at the classical era, you'll understand what wasn't that people were copying each other. It was art was evolving with the time that it was in, and it was also affecting the time that it was in and being affected by it. So yeah, Gnidrolog was a powerful, and people have said to me over the years, how did you do it? How did you do that? How did you arrive that, but I'm not Johnny Depp in that way and say I don't know because I don't listen to it. I can say to you, everything is scripted. Everything, yeah, we were trying to engineer everything to that last chord, the E major, if you see what I mean.
How many takes on each of these songs roughly? Is it 1 take each, 10 takes each, 100 takes each? Like what?
Oh no, it doesn't work like that at all. Because you're deconstructing things.
Oh, you're doing layer by layer? You're just recording layer by layer?
Absolutely layer by layer. It was really weird because the engineer didn't know what the hell was going on. They had no idea of what we were thinking of the end was going to be. You know, so the backtracks were, you know, they were used to using click tracks or backtrack or something, using an instrument that was going to be constant, as they do in a studio now. You know, nowadays they do something called quantizing, which is sort of measuring, pulling every beat into its correct position. Well, no, that's not what we were doing at all. So if you look at something really dense, one of those tracks, you've got the track list in front of you there, haven't you?
Yeah. Yeah. Lady Lake.
There is Lady Lake's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
Love it.
And there you've got some of the things on that track that I love the most. The oboe.
Mm.
You know, magical sound, isn't it?
Oh.
And the song itself. The other thing is that we didn't write lyrics, we wrote poetry. And therefore we had to fit the poetry into the music. These aren't lyrics. So if you read the words, they're written as a poem, not as a... In other words, the lyrics have to stand artistically in their own right for us. There's nothing really in Gnidrolog. I mean, some of the songs that Colin sings are much more like lyrics, you know. The song, they're a song lyric. If you read them, you think, oh, well, maybe not.
Well, Same Dreams, I think Same Dreams is the most sort of pop tune on the Lady Lake.
Yeah, that's one of... those are Colin songs. That's very a Colin thing. I just play guitar in it, you know. But Lady Lake is my thing. That's my thing.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
It's an achievement.
It's difficult, but it has what I want. It has that tension, that awkwardness, and that you just want the relief and the release. Social embarrassment is also really growing on me, social embarrassment. But I'm curious about the poem or the lyrics. Do you have any insight into what that was all about, the social embarrassment?
It's a social environment. You're a waiter in the queue. At school, they were, yeah, even remember some of the words.
Seasons greet. No, that's Lady Lake. Yeah, I've got the lyrics here. If only my eyeballs worked. You are a social embarrassment. You're a waiter in the queues. All school, they were teaching you to fit into place with the 35 others too. The only consensus of opinion was for a rain mac or a bowler hat.
Yes. A rain mac or a bowler hat. You know, and it was very much about society at the time. It's how we were going to fit you as just like the TikTok man, you know, how are we going to fit you into being that little, you know, that hole. Doesn't matter what shape you are, that, you know, we've got various holes and we need to fill everyone into them. We didn't fit into any of those, either as a band or as musicians or as artists. There was no hole you could drop us into. It was, and that's what it's about for me. It was about that stress, if you want, between trying to fit something into a hole, because that's what you expected. You know, you listen to a piece of music, you expect that you are going to have resolution, that, you know, you're going to be fairly happy at the end of it. I don't know. Not with Gnidrolog. I'm going to be happy at the end of Lady Lake. I don't know.
It says here, how could they hear you? The music was too loud.
Yeah.
And was only telling tales. So that always find that curious. I wonder what your thoughts are on that. Like, how could they even hear you? The music was too loud. What music? What are you talking about?
Well, the music that was around us, the music that was playing every time you went into a shop or whatever, or you went to see a group, you know, bands would never. We used to use a lot of dynamics on stage. The most the most powerful way to use volume is with silence.
Mm.
But lots of bands just wanted to hit you with it the whole time. There was no silence, so you never knew what loud was. That's kind of what that's attributing towards. And is society like that? Yeah. You turn on the TV now and it's wall-to-wall advertising, and hey, it's not loud, but it is, if you see what I mean. It's just noise.
You know what I'm amazed by? I work in construction. I have to drive around to job sites from time to time. I listen to the FM radio. It's pop radio, and there's nothing I like more than a really well-crafted, overproduced pop song. If it's done right and the melody's catchy and it's good, I love it. I love it. Are you the same? Are there some new songs today where you turn on the radio and you're not expecting to like any of it, but it's like, hey, what is this? I like it.
Give me an example. There's a whole world of music out there. Indian classical music.
But I'm talking about pop commercial crap, and it just happens that there's a gem in there that appeals to you. Has that ever happened to you, or you just don't like commercial pop music?
No, built that city. I kind of yeah. Look, I know this stuff and I hear it, and there are bands that you would say are kind of pop rock bands like ZZ Top and all that kind of stuff, and I love that too. Because it fills a hole.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need the comfort of anticipation.
Yeah. Something easy reading, easy listening. My friend in the chat was asking you to comment on Queen and the band in Canada, Rush. So I don't know if you like Queen, or have you heard about Rush? You're aware of Rush?
Yeah, absolutely. And the drummer, isn't it? Oh, what a fantastic musician. Great band, fantastic music. I like them very much. Queen, I admired their musicianship and their songwriting skills. And of course, Freddie, great performer. But if you said Queen, Rush, I think I'll go with Rush.
Yeah. It's a bit too rock and roll for me, but
great. It's all great in a way. It's just too great. If you said to me, name the greatest guitarist around at the moment, who are you? Great guitars. And as a guitarist, I listen to a lot of guitar players, and some of them are phenomenal. Satriani and superb technicians and very, very skillful players. And but if you listen to Neil Young play a really bad solo but mean it, I'd rather have that, to be honest with you.
Right.
I'd rather think, well, it doesn't matter that he's not playing a lot of notes as quickly as possible, or even that his technique is appalling. But boy,
well,
you hear his heart, don't you?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
well, that's what I was saying about your brother's vocals, and you skirted the question. You didn't answer my question. I want to know, is he technically good or not? Because he sounds kind of rough around the edges to me, but I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, he can be. He can sing a song like any other pop singer. Perfectly pitched, without emotion. In a flat way, and do the vibrato when it's needed. That's not what Gnidrolog was about. We wanted that to be raw, We wanted to hear him use his voice like Neil Young plays the guitar.
There's a real crazy guy. He killed himself. Keith Emerson. I was a fan of the Nice. The Nice, right?
Yeah, we knew them well. And they did a lot of the same gigs that we did. Wonderful musician, Keith Emerson. They were all good, actually. Largely what they were doing was taking classical pieces, and Keith was kind of doing his thing, stabbing the organ. But we loved all that.
Was he a happy guy?
No, quite withdrawn. Not an easy guy to talk to. You know, we would say hello, and they would say hello. We would say we like this, and they would say they like that. You know, it's one of those things. But I never got the impression that he was a happy guy. I don't know this, but somebody said to me that Emerson died because of the flack that he was getting from people that said they supported the band and his playing, and I think his mental attitude went down significantly. I mean, if you're in a band called Gnidrolog, the first thing you've got to appreciate is you're going to get flack. Some people are not going to like this. And what's not to like about Keith Emerson? The music is wonderful. Fantastic musician, tremendous technician, creative guy. Actually, Nice were a better band than ELP, I have to say. Sorry about that.
Yeah, for sure.
In terms of creativity and what they were doing and how they were doing it, Nice were a better band, but they were never as big as band as ELP were. I remember somebody was telling me we were trying to get some work in the States, and we were actually based over in Florida, and we wanted to go to Nevada and the other side of America, and they said, don't bother, ELP can't get a concert anywhere there, you know, because they were kind of trying to touring and doing some shows. This was before Emerson died, of course. And I thought, wow, either the music scene's really bad. But, you know, I'm the kind of person who loves to be banned. Ban me, you know. The great thing about Port Dukes, because it was banned everywhere and sold loads of records. Tell me,
it's amazing.
And that was us laughing at the music industry.
Well, it was kind of Dada. I guess it was like a Dada thing. You were talking about the different art schools, and you know, the Bonzo Dog Band was very Dada school, right? Dada art movement.
Yeah, it was. It was. What was it?
Taking the Mickey out of everything, like.
I kind of liked, you know, Viv to me was a comedian and a very good one. You know, I don't know if you ever saw them live or you ever saw Viv work, you know. Fantastic.
I saw a documentary about him. I watched a documentary about him on BBC that was very good.
Very clever, very articulate, lovely man to speak to. They were all good. All of the musicians in that band were absolutely top. And they were taking the piss, and it was just great. We were at a time when the piss needed to be taken a lot of people, and they did it expertly.
I appreciate your time. I have to let you go, but I've got a couple of quick questions from the live chat. What about the Stranglers? That's one thing. And then what about Mark Bolan and T-Rex?
Wow. Well, the Stranglers. Interesting enough, the drummer that I work with now, Nicky Forbes, plays with the Stranglers quite a lot. They're still touring, not with the guy who was originally in the Stranglers, who I think now works on his own, whose name I forget. I apologize. Lovely band, great band. And do you know, they were, when they were having hits, they were older. You know, they weren't in their early 20s or their mid 20s. They was kind of like, which I kind of really appreciated, especially now at my age. And they're still gigging. And yeah, good music. I like the band very much. Good tracks. And the other band, yeah, you know, I mean, which was about dope, obviously. Yeah, very good band. And as I say, they still, I don't know if they're gigging in the States. I know they gig here in Europe and England quite a lot. And I do go now and again because my drummer is actually playing with them. So I try and keep in with people. And what was the other band?
Mark Bolan and T-Rex, yeah. The early stuff.
Mark Bolan. We actually did some gigs with Mark Bolan when he was just in a duo with this other guy who would just come and play
bongos,
very bad drums. You know, he just played congas or something. and Mark Bowden would sit there and, with his acoustic guitar and do his shit. But I thought at the time, do you know what? You're quite pretty, aren't you? And I know where you're going with this. Never met him, got to say, which was strange because, we're East London people and he was around in that area. I can't remember where he lived exactly, but somewhere in East London. We weren't really on the same trajectory. Mark Bolan wasn't he was just trying to write good pop songs, and he wrote good pop songs.
Yeah.
And he was very pretty.
Yeah.
So
he died young. He died, I think, in a car crash with his girlfriend or something like that. But I have. Huh?
Was he one of the 27-year-olds that died?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Because it was Hendrix, and you think of the people that died at 27. When I got to 27, 28, I thought, thank God for that. I don't have to go. I can stay.
I was a little bit disappointed, when I sort of started watching documentaries about Mark Bolan. He seemed just a little bit arrogant and a bit of a dick. I don't want to speak ill of the dead. I'm sure he's a sweet guy, but he didn't come across the way I wanted him to. And I'm sure you've seen some real egomaniacs in the music business, right? You're not one. Your brother is probably not one. And all the boys in your band are not. And I'm sure my friends in Mark Hamill Peter Hamill or whatever his name is from Graaf Generator, I'm sure he's a cool guy too, right?
I have to say that the people that you're talking about were just really ordinary people.
Yeah.
Who happen to play. That's all. We love playing and making music. There's nothing outstandingly different. Other than that, we're pretty boring. And we have kind of normal, and we don't have any aspirations of world domination at all.
Well, I want you to form a Gnidrolog fan club so I can join it. I've been searching the internet, there's no fan club. What the heck? I want a little sticker, a button, I want something.
I get interviewed, by various people over, in different ways. I did one not long ago with BBC, and they asked me a lot of the questions that you've asked me now. And they've never actually put it on air. And I went up to, BBC is kind of the big thing here still, especially for radio. And I was quite heartened. And the guy obviously knew what he was talking about and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, will it get to air? I don't know. I think, not that I was saying anything outrageous or, maybe it's because people like me don't have any pretensions. We're just doing what we're doing. Maybe it's because they want the drama. They want a bit of melodrama in their lives, don't they? We've got to be taking lots of drugs and killing everyone around us and having very difficult lives. But Colin and I have both been married for 150 years, and we've both got 3 children, and we live the same kind of lives that hopefully most other people. To me, that's a really great thing. I love my gardening. I love ordinary things. I'm just somebody who plays and writes. That's all.
How'd you meet the wife? Was it through music?
Absolutely not. If I have to say that any woman who I would meet through music would immediately be demoted. I have met a few people who you would describe as groupies, who are wonderful people and basically hang around musicians. I'm thinking of one, but not for sex. So there are, for instance, a group of women who are very, very educated musically, who are interested in what you're doing and have lots to add and to critique. And it's been great meeting those and being friendly with those. But the type who are clearly getting into your pants, I would say I've stayed well away from. So I didn't meet I met my current wife, who we've been married since 1980. So quite some time. We have 3 children together through a mutual friend. And she's tone deaf, and which is great. I said to her right off, you don't follow bands, do you? And she said, no, I've got no interest whatsoever. I said, good, you're in. You might make it. So no, yeah, I think, there are increasingly women who are into the music scene because they enjoy music and they're in the same way that men do. Why is that wrong?
Yeah.
That whole thing about if a woman's in a dressing room, it must be because she's, wanting to put her hands down your trousers or something. No, it doesn't really work out like that, because people would just run, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, if you put it to most people, it might be kind of a fantasy that there are women around like this. But what they're actually interested in is, will you support them
Forever.
Financially and forever, and drag them around and one thing? The answer is no. But that I do have some very close friends who are women here who I still keep in touch with, and we still talked about music.
Well, one of the least attractive things for me in a woman is if she shows any interest in me or thinks that I'm cuter or anything like that. It's just like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? As a turnoff for me personally, maybe because I got low self-esteem, but my wife, I'm married to a Greek woman, and she was a very special character, and she managed to somehow to corner me and marry me, but she's a very special, sweet lady. But I
can tell you something now, mate. Women, listen to this. This is going to rock your boat. This is going to make your week. Women are attracted to men. Did you know that?
No.
No.
Why?
I never worked.
The question is why. The question is why.
Why? Who would do it? And I'm not gay. I'm straight. But what I'm saying to you is, I don't get that. Why would a woman particularly be sexually attracted to a man? But you know what? Apparently they are. But I don't get it. I'm 73. I still don't get that. So if any of your listeners here today are women, perhaps they would tell us.
Zero women in my audience. Did you have a lot of young men in your audiences at the live gigs in the 70s? Or is it a few? What was the ratio men to women?
Mainly men, but I think that was the rock thing. If you were a rock band and you had drums and bass and you wore shiny stuff, it was mainly the men coming to it. But as I say, out of that, there are some exceptional women that really. I'm thinking of Eve Diamond in the States, who I've known for years. She knows more about music than many men do. Great. But genuinely, it's men who. I wonder if women buy the records but don't go to the gigs. I don't know. Are women becoming more emancipated in that way in the music industry? I mean, I'm trying hard to think about women I really admire in music. Joni Mitchell, mate.
You mentioned Joni Mitchell, yeah.
The only reason I'm speaking to you today as a Canadian
is because of Joni Mitchell.
One of the reasons, because she's one of the greatest writers. Forget about being a woman or a man. She's just a great writer and a great person. And it's great to enjoy her music. She's leaving such a wonderful collection of superb work, How many Joni Mitchells are there around now? Beyonce. I mean, do me a favor. I mean, you can't follow that. When you're talking about the greats, the real greats, you have to remember that time. 69 to 72, magic period.
Yeah.
Because think of who else was around and recording and making records, and it was a wonderful time to be 19. Yeah. It really was. I mean, I don't know. I don't get a lot of the modern music scene. I don't get what artists were talking about. You could name 100 artists who are performing and recording today, and I probably wouldn't recognize many of them, except having heard now and again them on the radio or something like that. God, name one who you think is as good as those artists in the 70s. And I'm talking Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, Led Zeppelin,
Yeah.
I mean, just take the standard, your standard great rock artists. We don't have anything like that now. And I feel sorry for the kids that they don't have greatness.
Yeah.
It's just not there. I think the other thing that I'd want to say, I know you probably wanted to wind up now, but I think if you look at the history of music and you go 1650, what happened in 1650? J.S. Bach, it was a magic time for music. Suddenly there were, Mozart, Haydn, 1650s, magic time, fantastic composers and what have you. Well, probably music history is like this. There seems to be in music history times and pockets of a couple of years where something happens and just a magical time, that Jimi Hendrix, shall I go on? 69 to 72. If you were young and really loved music, boy, what a great time you were having.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. I always ask people, why is it me, or did something special happen between 69 and I go a little bit further in the 70s because I do like punk, and I like new wave too, so I can go even further. But for me the sweet spot is the early 70s, and I just ask people, is it just a question of taste? Is it just me, or did something happen? And you seem to be telling me something happened and it's not just me. Like, it's really magical.
It was. Absolutely. And when I've been playing music on and off, and I'm still doing it, for a very, very long while. And I've been lucky enough to meet some great musicians and I've played with everyone I wanted to play with one way or the other, which is great. So played with great musicians, heard musicians, brought the music, and can you top that period in music? I don't think you can. And it's not just because I'm an old fart listening to that. It really is, because that's where the pinnacle was. Maybe it'll happen again. Maybe it'd be there a period in 10 years' time when we're flooded with absolute dynamic, wonderful artists producing new music, but it's not really happening now. So
did you like or maybe you met or worked with I don't think you would have, but Joan Armatrading? Do you know about her?
I know about Joan, yeah, and I like her a lot, and I she's a very fine musician and a great singer. Our paths kind of not crossed because she's not a London musician. I think she comes from up north, as they say. But I know of her work, but we were never we wouldn't have been billed. In other words, bills that we appeared on, probably Joan wouldn't have done that, because she mainly works as a solo singer-songwriter. I know she's got a band now, hasn't she? And I like her stuff. But here again, put that in context with other really great, outstanding solo women performers like Joni Mitchell. Is she in that kind of
not quite
bracket?
That level of genius? Not quite. No.
She's written a few great songs.
Yeah.
She's written a few great songs, and she's a great performer, but she's not.
Do you remember Turn Out the Lights? Turn Out the Lights. Do you remember that one? She sings. Was that one of her songs? Yeah, she sings with a deep, sexy voice, telling the guy to turn off the lights and come to bed. It's just like, it's very powerful.
Sounds great. I'll have to hear that again.
Yeah, you'll have to listen to that. But when you were talking about being a good boy with the ladies and all that sort of thing, I was thinking about the Rolling Stones and the drummer. I saw a documentary. I only saw one documentary about this drummer guy, but he sounded like he was faithful to his wife and he wasn't fooling around. He was a good guy, and the rest of the band were kind of wild. Is that true? Is that impression that I got? Is that accurate?
Charlie Watts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Charlie was also known as a jazz musician. I mean, people don't realize that he was a great jazz drummer. And, he did other things than the Rolling Stones one way or the other. And yeah, he's a very straight, normal, happy married guy.
And his demeanor is so cool. He's cooler than any rock star I've ever seen. He's so cool. Is that the jazz? Is that the jazz thing?
Oh, I'm sure it is. And he plays, even for the Rolling Stones, he plays in the jazz style, doesn't he? With the side stick and everything. I mean, yeah, I love Charlie Watts, both as a person and as a musician. I never knew him. We didn't move in the same kind of circles, but I admired him because of course he died last year, didn't he?
Uh-huh.
Wonderful musician, wonderful guy. But you know, you look at the Rolling Stones and you think, how the hell do you do that? You guys are older than me, and I don't know what they're on, those guys, but I probably should try it, shouldn't I?
No,
Because
no, 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 no. They probably signed away their souls to Satan. But
yeah,
you know, don't do it. Don't do it. You're aging very gracefully. It's amazing to see. So I appreciate your time, and I hope you come back and chat with me again, because it's just been beautiful talking with you. You're a wonderful person. But I want to end with your thoughts on God Almighty, Shaddai, Adonai, whatever you want to call him, the big man in the sky. You know, there's a lot of classical music. J.S. Bach brings tears to my eyes. And it is a religious experience. Music is a religious thing. Just talk to me and my listeners, because this whole episode, you know, most of my episodes are about God. So I talked about music, but music is very close to God. So I want you to wrap up by talking about if you believe in God, if you worship God, and how music fits in with that.
yes, I think music is worshipping God. Art is worshipping God. You know, what greater height can man achieve other than exploring music and art? I don't know that there is. And surely, you talk about Bach. You know, if you know Bach, and I studied Bach for many years, you know, clearly Bach was a very religious man, and everything he wrote was an expression and a worship to God, wasn't it? I mean, and I'm not talking about the coffee cantata here, but if you've listened to Matthew's Passion, and
That's the one. That's the one that brings me to tears. Whoa!
massive B minor, it doesn't get any better than that. You can't write that. You know, he was doing rock and roll in the 1650s, and he kind of, in a way, Beethoven is the same. You know, there's a kind of religious connection with Beethoven, because deaf as he was, you can hear him trying to express for himself what God was. And, you know, there are people who believe in God, and there are humanists who are really good people, but you know, don't believe in God. And my take on it is, at the risk of excluding everything else, if you think of creation, you know, there must be a God. And part of my worshipping God, not just by being a good person, by the way, because I think that's essential in how you conduct your life and what you do with people, and how you relate to people, and kindness. It's also about the understanding that there is a greater force than you, and you are the reason for it. And if you are the reason for it, you better make the best of it, because I'm sure God would think, what better way to use your life than the happiness of others through making music, through creating art, by being a good person. So that to me is what God is. You know, God is about doing those things every day, all the time. That should drive you. That should make you who you are. And that's your expression of what God is and what God can be. And is there a God? Well, of course there is a God. Of course there is. What other answer can anyone ever have? So my wife is a Methodist, by the way.
Ah.
She's kind of a regular churchgoer. I'm not a person who kind of worships in that way, but she enjoys the comfort of that and the community of that, and that's a good thing. And therefore, I recognise that whatever religion it is, Christianity, and I see what good Christianity does in this country, especially through charity and through the community. It does a great deal here. So these are big pluses. So if there is a kind, benevolent part of God, then surely that expression would be saying, you know, this is how humans can achieve greater things. So that to me is what God is. It's not somewhere necessary where you have to go to a church and say words, but to have inherent in you a way of behaving and a way of achieving things, whether that be through music or through art or through community. To me, that's what praying to God is. That's what being close to God is. Bach knew that, didn't he?
Absolutely.
When you listen to Bach, you can only think, that's praying. Why would Bach ever need to go to a church service when he could write Matthew's Passion, Mass in B minor? Where did all that come from? His belief in God, his belief in that greatness and his worship of that greatness through the things that he did. And kind of being a believer is also about conducting yourself in your life in a way that reflects what the best things about God and about belief. So that's where I'm at with all of this.
Absolutely. Is your brother on the same page with you, or have you had deep conversations with him about these sorts of things?
Yeah, I think, spiritually, it's quite interesting, Judaism as a faith. It's quite often dismissed as a very pragmatic religion. It's all about doing things, not eating bacon, being circumcised, going to the synagogue on Saturday. Actually, a very big part of Judaism is about faith based in your behavior, not just your adoration and what you do. What you do is merely a reflection of those things. They call it being a mensch. A Jew would call it being a mensch. And mensch in Yiddish means a good person. That's the highest thing that you can achieve on this earth, is to be a mensch. So people who are truly Jews attempt to do that. And people who are Christians try to do that. Do you know, just briefly, the Archbishop of Canterbury, we have a wonderful cathedral here in Canterbury, of course. And the Archbishop of Canterbury is a wonderful man. I do love him. He's a lovely guy. And he sits in the House of Lords, which is one of our parts of our parliament. And boy, did he give the government a hard time recently, and stood up and spoke passionately about, what the country should feel for immigrants to this country. I mean, racism is one of the worst evils of our society. But he said what many of us think, and that is, what Jesus said as well, let those who are suffering come to me, we should be doing the same. Now in this country, they're trying to stop desperate people coming to the country on boats, fleeing wars in Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. All they're thinking about is how can they stop people coming to this country. Canada, the United States, Great Britain were built on people going to those countries and making new lives. And of course, that is what SHIP is all about. Let's come back to music, yeah? That it's about Exodus, which was the boat exodus that the British stopped Jews coming from Eastern Europe landing in Israel. When the ship touched on the landing, they knew. So read those words again and think Exodus, and you'll know what we were talking about. And one of the greatest evils in the world now is racism and discrimination, and not giving your fellow human being a leg up when they need it. That to me is about me showing who I am, showing where my God is in my body, in my psyche. That's part of being a mensch, a good person. And I'm sure many people that aspiring to listen to music, when you hear great music, aren't you hearing God? Certainly hearing it when you hear Bach.
Absolutely.
So
You know, it's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure meeting you, and you're a touching human being. And you know, in my Christian faith, we say there are 10 commandments, but those 10 commandments can be reduced to six commandments: love of God in thought, word, and deed, and love of neighbor in thought, word, and deed. And those can be further reduced to just two commandments: love of God, love of neighbor. But the thing about loving God is that the only way we can love God is by loving our neighbor. That's the trick about religion, is that you're not a religious hypocrite. Like in Jesus' day, he was talking about religious hypocrisy, and some of the Jews who made a great show externally about their piety. Jesus said, you have to love your neighbor. That's how you, and he said, if you love me, you know, if you're claiming to love me, then show me. Keep my commandments. And the commandments are about loving God and neighbor, but the only way that we can show our love for God is by loving our neighbor. So I agree with you 100% about the sort of compassion, the openness, and the love and the respect and the acknowledgement of the dignity of the person. Doesn't matter what color their skin is or how, you know, anything, any of these cultural things. And you know, I'm very moved by your music. You know, you mentioned Ship. You mentioned we talked about Gnosis, the album from 2000, and that beautiful song about Shaddai. And we've talked a lot about the different ways that musicians express themselves and bring us, the listener, closer to God, because I'm not a musician. I don't know about reading music or the technicalities of jazz or classical or even rock, but I am touched by you because of how you express yourself and your brother and all the other bandmates. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, and I love you and I respect you. And I'll just ask you one favor, which is to hound and nag your wife until she comes on my podcast and talks to me about her Methodist faith. That would be great.
You don't want to know. She's great. And I send my regards and greetings to your wife too.
Thank you so much. And please do me a favor. Come back and talk to me sometime in the future. We'll just chat about music and whatever's on your mind, whatever interests you. And it's a real joy and a pleasure to have met you. And it's fulfilling this fantasy. I've been living with this obsession about Gnidrolog for so long, and now it's a reality. I got to meet you. And please give my love to your brother and tell him that I'm praying for him and his health. Okay?
Thank you so much.
God bless
Bye
you.
to you.
Take good care now. Thanks again. Bye-bye.